There's a voice a lot of people live with every day, and it whispers things like, you're not ready yet, you're not there yet, you still need to fix this, or improve that, or hide this, or clean that up. And the worst part about this is that most of the time we believe it, and we hold ourselves back, and we delay the call. We keep the camera off. We don't say what really is on our mind, or we don't let them see how deeply it is that we feel. Because somewhere deep inside, we've been taught that until you're flawless, you're not worthy of being fully seen. That's what today's episode is all about. It's this myth that you have to be perfect to belong. And the pressure to only show up when you're polished is pretty immense. It's this quiet revolution of showing up only when we're flawless. Now, this isn't about giving up on growth. It's not about settling or playing small, but it's about choosing presence over performance. It's about refusing to let shame keep you from actually being known. Because the truth is, if you wait until you're fully healed, you might spend your whole life hiding. So let's talk about where this belief started. I think for a lot of us, we weren't taught that love meets us where we are at. We were taught instead that love arrives when we get it right. And it showed up when we got the grade, right? When we didn't cry, or when we made everyone else feel comfortable. When we stopped asking for more. And over time, our nervous system learned. It learned that being yourself is risky, and having needs is inconvenient, and showing up with a mess is unacceptable. So what did we do? We built a mask, right? We polished our performance. We became the version of ourselves that felt easier to love. And it worked for a while, right? But then we realized that the more we performed, the more we disappeared. And suddenly we couldn't tell the difference between the connection and the applause, between love and approval, and between safety and silence. And that's why showing up as you can be so powerful. Not because it guarantees a better outcome, but because it's how you reclaim your humanity. Because every time you show up without the mask, you're reminding your body that I don't have to be perfect to be present. And that kind of self-acceptance is radical. It interrupts generations of shame. And yeah, it is scary. It'll make you feel exposed, and for some people, they might even flinch when they see the full version of who you are, but then others won't. Some will probably breathe a little deeper, or some will say, finally, someone who's not pretending. And those moments are everything. Yeah. Let's get even more honest, shall we? Sometimes the hardest part isn't about being seen by others. It's actually seeing yourself. Seeing yourself with compassion instead of criticism. And so you wake up and think, why am I still struggling with this? Why haven't I figured this out yet? Or why do I keep messing up the things that matter most to me? And in that moment, you have a choice. Are you going to punish yourself into silence, or are you going to offer yourself grace and keep showing up? That's the real question, because healing isn't about becoming flawless. It's about choosing to engage again and again, despite your fear. And that's not weakness. That is courage. So let's also name how this hits men specifically, shall we? See, for so many men, we are told you have to be strong, you have to be capable, you have to be in control, and don't show weakness. Don't talk about your feelings unless you've already figured them out. And so men, we retreat into silence, or we only share when we're ready, or feel like we've conquered the pain. Or we offer stories that sound like victories, but never the process, right, of how we got there. And the healing isn't like it's not like a TED Talk. It's not a highlight reel. It's not even a strategy. It's sitting with your sadness and saying, I don't know how to fix, but I want to experience it. This is what showing up anyway looks like. So you go on the date even though you're nervous, right? Or you make the call even though your voice sounds shaky. Or you tell yourself your truth even though you're afraid that others, when they hear it, might leave. You get back up after you were ghosted. Or you apologize when you'd rather hide. You walk into that room, not with bravado, but with presence. And it's in these moments that you don't just reclaim your voice. It's these moments that give you permission. Actually, they give others permission to also reclaim their voice as well. Because authenticity is contagious. And when you show up flawed, but faithful, you're making it safe for others to also be real as well. Let's talk a little bit about what stops people from showing up though, shall we? See, at the heart of it, it's not laziness. It's not fear of effort. It's actually shame. It's that slow and silent voice that says, they'll only accept a cleaned up version of you, or you're too much, or you're not enough, or you're both. You don't belong, not until you fix that, right? And so shame teaches us to shrink before we ever even try, to hide in the name of protecting others from our messiness. But here's the thing, shame is not the truth. Shame it's like training. It's the muscle memory of being dismissed or misunderstood or rejected for who you really are. And the only way to rewire that memory is to let yourself be seen again on purpose. And that doesn't mean being reckless with your vulnerability. It means actually being intentional. It means choosing safe spaces and practicing small risks and checking in with your body when you feel the urge to hide. This is not about dumping your pain onto everyone else. It's about building relational integrity, where your inner truth is aligning with your outer actions and expressing who you really are and showing up with yourself before you even show up with others. Because when you start to stay with your emotions and to sit with the pain and the doubt and the longing, it's then that you realize that you don't have to be rescued. You just needed to be witnessed. So let's get a little bit practical for a sec, shall we? Here are a few ways to begin showing up anyway, even when you feel deeply flawed. Number one, name what you're afraid might happen. Like say it out loud or write it down. Say, I'm afraid that they're going to leave, or I'm afraid that I'm going to disappoint them, or I'm afraid that I'm not worthy of loving if they see the real me. And when you name it, you're in essence disarming it. You're taking the shame out of that hiding. Number two, breathe before you perform. You see, when you feel the urge to edit yourself or impress someone or to say what you think they want you to say, take a breath and then come back to your center. Ask, what's truer than what I'm about to say? Even if it's messy, choose the real thing. Thirdly, let someone see you in the process. Not just when you've figured it out, that's the easy part, right? But while you're still struggling, let them see you in the midst of wrestling. Let them hear the uncertainty. Let them be close before you've solved your challenge. That's intimacy. Fourthly, don't wait for confidence. Confidence is a result. It's not a prerequisite. It comes after showing up, but not necessarily before. So don't wait to feel bulletproof. Show up scared, show up unsure, show up with shaking hands but open hearts. That's what real presence looks like. And fifthly, celebrate the fact that you actually stayed. Even in even if that conversation was awkward, even if your voice was trembling, even if no one was clapping or thanked you for or validated your courage, stay. And when you stay, celebrate that. You didn't retreat. You didn't disappear. And that counts. That's courageous. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that people will always respond well. We're not saying that every space is a safe space. And I'm not saying as well that vulnerability always ends in connection. But what I am saying is that every time you show up with your full self, you build trust with yourself. And that trust, that's what creates safety from the inside out. There's something unshakable about someone who knows that they're flawed, but also knows they're still worthy. Not because someone told them so, but instead because they decided to stop abandoning themselves. It's because they've realized that presence is far more valuable than perfection. And that is what makes you trustworthy. Not that you never fall, but that you keep coming back. You come back to yourself. You're coming back to the conversation, and you're coming back again to the table with your heart intact. Even if your heart is bruised, even if you're scared, even if you felt rejected and dismissed before, you keep coming back. That's the kind of person that people remember. That's the kind of person that people actually want to walk with. This is the kind of person who builds connection that lasts. And it's not because they performed. It's not because they were putting on a show, but it's because they were real. And realness is magnetic, even when it's flawed, especially when it's flawed. It's relatable, right? So let me talk about how to show up in relationships, especially the romantic ones. For so many, dating, it's become this stage, right? We curate our profiles and we practice our lines and we hide our insecurities behind our charm or our silence. And beneath all of this is this fear that says if they saw the real me, they would blitz. So we audition instead of connecting, and we try to be low maintenance, easy to love, right? Not too much. And we offer this shiny version of ourselves, and then we wonder why relationships feel hollow. But isn't it because it's impossible for someone to love you deeply if they never knew the real you, if you never gave you to them? Here's the truth. Being chosen while wearing a mask, it might feel good for a moment, but it will never feel safe. Because you'll always be wondering, would they stay if I stopped performing? Would they still choose me if I fell apart? And that anxiety, it eats away at connection. It turns closeness into pressure, and it slowly teaches you to hide again. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to show up flawed, to admit when you're afraid to say, I'm still learning how to trust, to allow yourself to be messy in front of someone who cares. That's where intimacy lives. Not in the perfection, but in the place where love stays, even when you don't have it all together. And let's not forget, this applies to friendships as well, right? So many friendships, they stay shallow because no one wants to burden the other, right? Everyone's scared to be the one who's struggling. And so we keep it light and we crack a joke and we say, I'm good, I'm fine, even when we're falling apart inside. But real friendship, it begins the moment someone says, I don't need you to impress me. I just want to know you. And you don't have to always be uplifting. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't even have to be emotionally consistent. You just have to be honest and present and willing to say, this is where I am today, and I'm still here. And when you find people who can meet you there, you've found something really sweet. something precious. Because those are the people who won't run when the lights go out. They'll stay. And it's not because you're perfect, but it's because you're being real. Let me pivot a moment now to what this looks like on the inside, right? Because I mean, showing up isn't just about what you do on the outside. It's about the relationship that you have with yourself. There's a correlation there. So many people, again, especially men, we carry this deep disappointment, right? And we look at our pasts and we say, I should have been better, right? Or I should have healed faster, or I should have known what to do. And that inner critique, it becomes a barrier, not just to the growth, but to the self-connection as well. And so they avoid their own emotions because they believe that they haven't earned the rights to feel them yet. But here's the truth. You don't need to be a finished product to be worthy of compassion. And you don't need to be high functioning to deserve that kindness. You can still be messy, still unsure, inconsistent, and still choose to stay with yourself. That's what it means to show up anyway. So here's something that I don't think gets said often enough. Sometimes showing up, it just means you're not walking out on yourself when it gets hard. You're not numbing, you're not ghosting yourself, you're not pretending it's all okay. You're just pausing, you're breathing, and saying, I'm not okay right now, but I'm still with me. And that moment, that's where this healing begins. Not with confidence per se, but with a certainty, with the courage to stay. To stay with your sadness, to stay with your fear, and to stay with this longing that the ache is still able to feel, even if it might be embarrassing. Because the truth is, the version of you that's hurting the most is also the one that most needs your presence in that moment. So let's reflect for a moment, shall we? What parts of you do you only bring forward when you're sure they were going to be accepted? Or what emotions have you learned to hide because they weren't welcomed before? And what would it feel like if you could let someone see those parts and stay? See, this is the work. This is the risk. And it's also the reward as well. Because when you show up flawed and someone still says, I see you and I'm not going anywhere, something inside of you begins to breathe again. Not because everything has been fixed, but because you're no longer hiding. So let me bring this all home. Showing up anyway isn't a feel-good phrase. It's a quiet revolution. It's a refusal to disappear. It's a brave, trembling decision to be seen in your process and not just in your polished form. And here's the truth that keeps ringing. Presence is far greater than perfection. Every time. Because the people who make the most impact on us, they're not always the most confident. They're not always the best dressed, or they're not always the most articulate. They're not the ones with the best strategies or the most impressive resumes. They're the ones who showed up with heart and who stayed honest even when it was awkward. They're the ones who didn't leave when it got heavy. They're the ones who let us see the cracks in their armor and still chose connection. So if you're feeling broken, show up anyway. If you're doubting your worth, show up just the same. If you're scared that they won't accept the full you, show up for your own sake. Not because the outcome is guaranteed, but instead because every time you show up as you are, you're sending a message to the parts of you that are still waiting for permission. And that is, you are allowed to be here too. That message changes everything. To the men who are listening though, let me say this. You don't have to be stoic to be strong. You don't have to be silent to be respected. You don't have to fix yourself before you offer your presence. The world has taught you that your worth is tied to your performance, but your heart actually knows otherwise. Your worth is your willingness to stay in the room still, to stay with yourself, to stay with your feelings, and to stay in the room when your instinct is saying run. And it's this kind of presence that's so rare. It's so powerful. It's healing, not just for you, but for every person who gets to experience it as well. And to the women who are listening, you've been taught to be easy to love, to be pleasant to be around, to be convenient to others, right? But you don't have to shrink yourself to be worthy. You don't have to hide your need or your fire or your sadness. You're not too much. You are whole. And you're allowed to be messy and still be seen. You are allowed to be angry and still be embraced. You're allowed to take up space and not apologize for it. Because the version of you that's unfiltered and present is the one that the world actually needs. And to everyone who's listening, we're not here to be perfect. We're not trying to perfect ourselves into belonging. We're here to remember that we were always enough. And that memory, it's restored through presence. It's restored through showing up and through saying, I'm still here, even with my cracks, even with my doubts, even with my fear. And here's what I hope you walk away with today. That you don't have to heal everything before you begin. You don't have to have the perfect words before you speak. You don't have to be confident before you connect. You don't even have to win before you're worthy. You just have to stay with yourselves, stay with your people, and with your truth. Just show up anyways, because presence, that is where the magic lives, not the outcome. It's not the approval, just presence. That's where love finds you, and that's where trust grows, and that's where change really begins. So if you've been hiding or waiting or hesitating, let this be your invitation. You don't need to be perfect. You just have to be real. You have to be flawed, tender, and still worthy. Still here, still becoming, still showing up. And that's enough.